So today is 11th day of April 2025. I should move that a little bit. And what time do you think it is? 8:30?
About.
You better turn that thing on.
Yes, 8:25.
8:25. So we've got a little over an hour to play.
I can. That's what I was doing, was setting an alarm for. Was it at 10? Is the.
It starts at 10:05 officially.
All right, then I'll set this for.
And we gotta find a way to
Cool.
get connected.
We can tether from phones because I got on the Wi-Fi here.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So start over. Today is the 11th day of April, 2025. It's approximately 8:30 in the morning, local time. You are Allison.
I am.
I am Cam. What else do we need to note?
I don't know. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful that you're willing to do this.
I'm genuinely honored to be invited.
That's a pretty powerful word. So there's this little formula that I've learned or I've been playing with where the first move, so to speak, is that expression of appreciation. So the gratitude.
It's a good way to start.
That sets something in the cognitive frame. And then the next piece of the formula is a gesture of humility.
Okay.
So I always bow my head a little bit, or some other, get down on my knees or something. And then frolic helplessly, basically, after that. So I got a whole bunch of different places we could go,
Okay.
metaphorically speaking. Is there anything in particular that you want to make sure that we do, or?
I don't think so. Yesterday it looked like you had a pretty good agenda, potential agenda.
Potential, yeah, I forgot to bring that out. I have it on a piece of paper in the bag. I'll pull it if we need to. If we get lost. I have a feeling we're not going to get lost though.
No. We might go way off track, but I don't think we'll get lost.
So, yeah, I really appreciate how you're willing to play the fool. Like you've said that before, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
And I hope that I'm also willing to play the fool. I feel like a fool a lot.
Sometimes.
And to me, there's some necessity in that.
For sure.
Okay,
You
say
don't want to.
for sure.
Well, you don't want to Dunning-Kruger yourself. Like you don't want to come in like you know everything, because then you are the fool.
For sure. Yeah, you're like you're
king
the
fool.
ultimate fool. Yeah. But you just said something there.
About Dunning-Kruger?
Well, what did you say after that though? There was a connection that got made in the theater of my imagination. It's not really mine, probably, but.
Well, if you come in thinking you know everything, or you go into any situation thinking you know anything, like you are the fool.
Yeah. How do you feel about the word fellow? Is that gendered in your mind?
Yes, but not in a problematic way. Like I don't have an issue with referring to like a group of people as fellows that would include women. It's kind of like the term men. Like if you're talking about like a group of people, like amongst men or whatever. Like, yeah, it's gendered, but not in my mind in a problematic way.
Okay. I appreciate that because I know
there are definitely people that would not agree with that,
but they're not here, so.
They're not.
So I would love to understand why they don't agree, but since they're not present, to explain it.
Well,
I'm gonna operate in good faith. How's that?
Okay. I mean,
I hope I'm operating in good faith.
I know there are definitely people that, I mean, I know a lot of people like that, that would take offense to the term fellow, and it's just, as far as I can tell, if you're not explicitly calling out the other group involved, like, you are being exclusionary intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, with fellow, like, isn't that a concept in higher education? Like, people, like,
I definitely
fellows
hear
or
it
fellowship.
in those contexts.
Yeah, and so, like, in that context, like, that's the, I think it's the title, but, like, that's what it is. Like, man or woman, that's what the title is. Anyways, there are people that if you don't explicitly call out women, you're excluding women. Or if you don't explicitly call out, I don't know, whatever other in-groups there might be, that you're excluding them intentionally. And that's why they get offended. Or at least that's my perception of the explanation.
Okay. So I guess what I'm trying to get to is that I want to be as inclusive as I reasonably can.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I experience reality, like all of reality, as a continuous flow.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, the particularization is like an artifact of the function of my processes of perception. I notice that it seems like there's a cup there. I notice that it seems like there's a jar here. It sure seems like I can manipulate this thing. There's another, there's a, I don't know that it's equal, but there's a continual awareness that that particularization isn't as real as the underlying experience of deep communion with the fabric of reality all of the time.
Okay.
So the fellow, the reason that I suppose, my best guess is that why fellow comes to mind for me is in relation with what you were saying about something like the meaning of the fool. And a dear fellow visited me yesterday. Mm-hmm. And a day we shared a meal. And as we were parting company, she said something along the lines of, how did she say that? I'm much less worried about everything that I know that I don't know than I am impressed with the little bit that I do know. We were both of us have we've known each other for probably what is this, 25? So 5-6 years now, and have watched each other go through some pretty intense evolutions. I guess is probably the
like a trauma bond by bystanding kind of effect.
Well, tell me, what is that when you say trauma bond?
Trauma bond.
What's a trauma bond?
Well, my closest, I'm going to go against for the purposes of this conversation, I'm going to go against what I would normally say. My closest friends, notice there's a plural.
Oh, wow.
My closest friends.
You're making progress.
Well, okay. The people that I have classically and continue to form the closest friendships with, the closest relationships with, are people that we have gone through some sort of traumatic or at least high stress event together. Because when there's a disaster, that's when I shine. So I'd like to think that anyways. Maybe somebody can tell me otherwise. But
that's been my experience. I
just
don't know
in
that
general?
you and I have actually encountered a real disaster yet, but
no.
I do notice that when
things get stressful,
when the stress load goes up, you start to come into your own.
when there's chaos, I'm there. No matter how much I fuck up, someone else is fucking up worse. Anyways, the closest friends that I have are people, so like right now it's the core group, so the people that you've met, so Kai, Ben, Mike, that we've gone through between like COVID and then like the collapse of my former friend group, and just a lot of shenanigans that have gone on in the workplace together, because we were all part of the same team, right? And so we've kind of, I think we would all agree that we've all kind of trauma bonded, because we went through those things, either the same things at the same times, or we watched like pretty stressful things happen to each other, and we're kind of supportive in our own socially weird ways with each other. But like if there are other people that I would say would call me a friend that I don't consider a friend, and like in thinking about that, it's because we don't have that trauma bond. There's nothing for me to like, maybe it's a judgment of their character or something. Like maybe it's seeing like, this is how this person stands up to stress, or how they handle stress. And like, as you know, I dread people crying in front of me. And so if it's somebody that's a big crier, it's like, all right, maybe that's not going to be somebody I keep in my like closer inner circle of friends, if that's how they handle trauma or whatever. Anyways, this is all to say that if I haven't gone through something like stressful with someone, I'm probably never going to feel that close to them.
Okay.
Which I think
so
is,
somewhere in there you cross over a line into friend.
well, there's the potential to do that, yes. There are definitely people that I have had some sort of stressful shared experience with that I don't. Like, I have some sort of affinity for them, I suppose, but I wouldn't consider them a friend.
So I guess that thing is done for the day.
Is that the little...
I hope the other one doesn't fail. My hack job. Recording studio here.
It could be worse.
It has been worse, yeah. So it feels to me that the most important thing that you said there has to do with the word bond, and then you also I think you also said connection. Mm-hmm. And I'm working with another fellow who is, I've only known him for maybe a little over 2 years now. Mm-hmm. I think I've drawn your attention to him. Kyle Koch?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's, I want to be careful. I want to respect privacy, I guess.
Sure.
So I want to be careful as to what I say here, but suffice it to say that I'm watching him go through one of life's major changes.
Okay.
We can just leave it to imagination for now. Right.
Sure.
Now, where he's, what would be the word to use? Transforming, mm-hmm. where you necessarily go through. Well, do you experience yourself as a process?
Yes.
More than as a fixed.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So there's these periods of acceleration. Mm-hmm. I notice that I'm a living creature. I am a process continually, and then there's developmental or high rate of change periods.
But there's parts of your life that has to happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the writing that I sent you yesterday. Mm-hmm. It's like you're introduced into the world. Like here's birth. Right.
There's one major one right there.
And then yeah. So you can depict a sine wave, and mm-hmm. it's got different amplitude and frequency over the course of an ordinary human life. Okay, so I'm almost 54 years old. Kyle is probably pretty close to your age.
Okay.
Which, can we call that out roughly?
I think I've told you how old I am like 5 times.
I know, but I don't want to speak it unless.
38.
Okay. Yeah, so he's going to be close range to you.
Okay.
So there's this generational appreciation that happens. It's like some of the stuff that I've lived through.
Okay.
Similar transition.
Yeah.
And so he sees me and can see, so the theory of mind thing where you can, I think we necessarily basically become one another. So so this practice that you and I are doing right now, for example, is very powerful for me. The body is well over half water. So, and I'm intently seeking to know more about reality through you. So this other body here is informing this body. So have you heard the term theory of mind before?
You've used it, but I haven't heard it anywhere else.
So it's a little bit misleading because I don't want to isolate it to mind.
Okay.
But theory of mind is, as far as the thinking mind goes, I think I know who I am. You and I have both repeatedly acknowledged the fact that we're all just making this up as we go. It sure looks like we're all just making this up as we go.
We definitely are.
So nonetheless, there's like this function, this utility that's happening in conscious awareness. There's an idea of who I am.
Right.
That's not who I am, but that's who I think I am.
Okay, yeah.
So then the same phenomena presumably is occurring over there associated with that. Does it bother you if I say meat bubble?
No. You can say meat bubble. I prefer blood bag, but
Blood bag?
we
Okay,
can say
so
meat
blood
bubble.
bag's
That's
good.
fine too.
So over in that blood bag over there, good Lord, that sounds horrible.
Well,
That's
as we've discussed, humans are disgusting. Like human bodies are disgusting.
Yes.
So meat bubble
That's for sure.
and blood bag both do it justice.
Yep, okay. So whatever that utterly astonishing phenomena is that's over there, there's a system of ideas around who you think you are. So I think I know who I am. You think you know who you are. You think, so then if you can match, the closer that we can match one another's theory of who we think we are, respectively, the more presumably, or the proposition here is the more harmonious we come in our conduct.
It's true, but what if one person doesn't really have a perception of who they think they are?
So that's a really interesting question, which I would love to explore. So did I close off on
Kyle?
anything?
No, you didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the bond, back to the connection. So so as part of the transition that he's going through, he's spent much of his career so far in like this, like first person contact, or small group. He's a
Is he the dog trainer?
No. I mean, he could definitely train dogs, but he's how would I say? He's the quintessential coach.
Coach of what?
Many things, but also just to speak to history. It's wilderness awareness, so nature awareness,
sure. Okay.
nature practices in the natural environment, and along with movement practices, and then more recently dialogical practices.
Okay.
So he's been integrating the various. I would refer to, or have been taught to refer to it as an ecology of practices.
Okay.
So you develop. An individual may, should they choose to, an individual seems to enjoy the agency to at least slightly modify patterns of behavior on a moment-to-moment basis. And we've talked about the infinite games and finite games construct where, so an infinite player, someone who recognizes that they're playing an infinite game, or chooses to at least believe they're playing an infinite game, we say that is a practitioner. You practice playing the game. Contrast that with the finite player, the finite game where the object is to end the game. So, and the rules are laid out so that you can actually achieve that. Because no constraints, no rules, how do you know who won? Like, how do you keep score?
Right.
Okay, so a finite player trains. Very particular skill sets. Like, it's so powerfully demonstrated when you look at things like National Football League. Like, when you look at those really high echelons of excellence in it's a very narrow domain, where you take a football player out of the arena and put them on the street, they look ridiculous.
Yes.
It's like, it's so far from ordinary reality. So the ecology of practices is something like, or maybe exactly, the increasingly refined selection of practices that donate across all the domains of life. So somewhat paradoxically, what I have found is, as I've consciously and intently sought to do that, is that you get this vertical going on where there's a hierarchy. It's like not all practices are equal. If I go back to the example of the football player, it's like I can get really good at throwing, a very carefully specified object
in very particular conditions.
Yeah. It has practically no donor
It doesn't
ability.
Translate to anything else.
Yeah.
Well, probably not.
Anyway, back to Kyle. And so what he's doing now is he's shifting more to online, where he's coaching. He's needing to spend time in a particular location for a period of time, doing things that he hasn't needed to focus that intently on before. So his revenue model is shifting to, I need to be able to coach people from afar. And I'm doing that with him as his, whatever, you could come up with some fun term for that.
I'd love to think about it.
I'm apprenticing to him. I'm his student. I'm playing the part of there's a bunch of different words for that. You get it, right?
I do. You're his Padawan?
You could say Padawan.
Nice. Yeah. Okay.
I'm talking a lot and I'm not really getting to the point. The point is the present practice, the first step in the program that he's got me running through right now is notice when you feel disconnected.
When you feel connected or disconnected?
Well, it's both. It's two sides of the same coin. But the first focus is what connects you. And then so I was making the connection with trauma bond. I'm real sensitive around the word trauma.
Okay.
And I've experienced what you're talking about, where many times where you go through intense circumstances with other people, and the depth of connection, that sense of connection, only is realized as a consequence of the severity of the circumstance that you just survived together. That's putting it in pretty dramatic terms. Anyway, so I just said a whole bunch of stuff, and I feel like I would love to hear if you have any thoughts, observations.
Thinking about the trauma bonding, and it doesn't have to be. No, it does. I was going to say it doesn't have to be like intensely negatively traumatic. It can be neutrally traumatic. But I'm trying to think if I myself have had any like especially strong bonds with people over something that was like intense but positive. And I'm not thinking of any good examples. Not that like didn't end up crashing and burning at some point. Like if you bond when you're both on like a high of something, not like a drug high, just like a high of whatever the scenario is. And then at some point, one or both of you is off of that high.
Yeah.
Then that's kind of like the end of the connection, the bond, whatever. But the lasting connections that I have made, even for people that like I don't think either of us would, there's a couple people I'm thinking of specifically, like I don't think either of us would think that we are friends, but we have a bond that if one of our lives were to turn really dire in some way, that we could still like connect with each other to help each other through that. Like, you know how well, I shouldn't say I know, I've been told that if you keep a connection with somebody in your life for, I want to say it's 7 years, it's supposed to be like a lifelong friend.
I haven't heard that.
Oh, I'm not 100% sure that it's true. But a couple of different people have told me that after 7 years, it's just somebody that's like, they're just kind of in your life to some capacity forever, if not like somebody that you're actively engaged with, somebody that's like in the back of your mind somewhere, and that if you were to like try to pick up a conversation with that person, you could be pretty amicable. It wouldn't be like starting over. But there's a couple people that are like that like we've been in and out of each other's lives for, like there's one person in particular that's coming to mind. I don't really know why. But like she and I have been in each other's lives for, oh God, I want to say since like 2015. So yeah, so like 10 years. And like, I haven't talked to her in a while, but like, I feel like if I were to text her and like, oh, what's going on? Like I would get a pretty quick response and like, we would talk like no time has passed. But that's because we had some pretty, she and I both at different times had some pretty traumatic situations.
Are you willing to define or at least sketch out what you mean when you say trauma? What qualifies trauma?
So in her case, it was a cancer diagnosis of her dad that escalated pretty quickly. And so she, like, losing your dad when you're in college would be hard.
Yeah.
And so for her, it was that. And then for me, it was the end of a long-term relationship. And they happened at different times, but she's a very private person, which is why I'm not naming her in case she ever comes around this.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think that I did a good job of being there for her during everything that happened with her dad. And there for her family as much as she would allow me to be. Like, she had a sister and her mom and everything. And then she was very much there for me when I like really needed a certain type of friend. Like, I needed somebody to distract me, not to like let me wallow, which is kind of what I was like leaning towards doing. And she knew me well enough to know that that's what I needed, which I guess is part of the trauma bond, right? Like, if you've seen somebody go through something difficult, you can probably in tune, I suppose, if I'm using the word right, what kind of support they need, or like what's going to be best for them, because you know the same kinds of support don't work for everyone.
Yeah.
Especially like a weirdo like me. Like I I don't want to talk about something. Like I want to, like if I have a feeling, I don't want to talk about it. I want to go like either do something about it or like distract myself from it and like work on it on my own time. And like she knew to do that. And she was, I think, probably the only person in my life that did, which at the time was a little bit surprising because like I wasn't like alone by any means, but she, like, of all the people that I would have considered friends at that time, she was the only one that like understood what I needed. And I would credit that to us having been through everything that happened with her dad. Like, she kind of saw like how I handled her, because she and I had some similar personality traits and just kind of treated me, I think, the same way that she felt I treated her, which was, again, the distraction, the getting out and like doing things and like just doing some weird shit and like like living life in a different way than we would have otherwise.
There's many things I want to pick up on there. I think you said in tune.
Yeah, am I using it correctly?
I don't know.
I mean that like her intuition for how anyone's intuition, not her specifically, but if you've been through something difficult with someone and you are aware enough of like their communication patterns or their behavioral patterns, like their body language, what they choose to focus on, like what they prioritize when they're stressed.
Yeah.
At least for me, I'd like to think that I can kind of sense like this is what this person's going to be expecting based again on like what I've seen them prioritize, how I've seen them handle stress, how I've seen them treat other people when they're stressed, because I'm a big believer in that most people will treat you how they want you to treat them if the situation were reversed. And maybe that's wrong, but like that's kind of how I've been going about my life, and it's worked out okay. So it's
at least you're up to 2 friends now.
Okay, let's not get carried away. It's just the one. The other 2 are a little further down. Sorry, guys.
Oh goodness. So I want to push a little bit more on trauma, and you can hand it back to me, and I can tell you how I think about trauma. But again, I tend to just really run my mouth. So, and I'm really interested in being informed. I'm really interested in being less clumsy. And the more that I'm just stuck to my own definitions of things, it feels like the clumsier I am. Mm-hmm. So, what's trauma? So if you how much vulnerability does that term have? As in how generalizable is that term?
To the average person or to me?
You.
To me, I tend to think of that it's not generalizable. That there's like very specific feelings that arise within a situation, or thoughts, maybe not feelings, depending, because it's me, on the degree to which I'm feeling something. But it's quarantine's the wrong word. It's relegated to a certain realm of emotion. Whereas I think a lot of other people in more like a generalized like therapy kind of space would consider trauma to be a wide ranging, like a friend hurt your feelings a handful of times, that's trauma. Which like maybe to some people they do consider that trauma, but like to me it needs to be like a deep, like it took some work on myself to get over. Like that's trauma to me.
To get over. Okay, you used a really interesting turn of phrase. You said I think you said it's confined to a particular emotional realm.
Yes.
So there's a whole realm, apparently.
Yes.
Can you tell me about that realm?
This is gonna be a weird one to describe. It's what's coming to mind is like Dante's Circle of Hell, and I don't really know why. But sort of in those lines, like it's a level of like if we were to scale severity of like negative emotion, like anything like below a 5 is this realm, like things that like I said, like they took time and like and or like serious like self-reflection to get through, and depending on what the situation is, in some way, like I have some, like if it happened to me, like I was involved, I had some impact on the situation presumably, but it's relegated to those like extra, not just extra negative, but that there's some meaning to be gained from it, I guess. And that's part of what keeps it in the realm of trauma, is like there's something to learn, and it's something that like took me time to work through. Mm-hmm. Or to either like make peace with it, or just like get the anger, because anger is probably the strongest emotion that I associate with it, out of my system. Because in thinking of like all the things that I would say were traumatic, like the only feelings I remember shouldn't say the only, the feelings that I associate with them the strongest are anger. Like there's sadness mixed in there too, but like that's what I remember the most is like different gauges of feeling angry.
How do you get anger out of your system?
Depends on what it is.
Are there reliable ways? I mean, is it like, do particular forms of anger require particular forms of expression, or is it something like a lightning rod where you can, where there's a reliable,
like I'll know I feel better if I do?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. Like thinking about, no, I think it depends on what it is.
So you might not know what the pattern of behavior, the appropriate pattern of behavior is to get it out of the system.
I'd believe that. Because like thinking about like the few things that like I've kind of like I have held on to anger about. Like I obviously haven't totally worked through it, but I've done all the things that I know to do. So it feels like it's just waiting it out. Like it's just time, which eventually over time, like there's nothing that I think I'll hold, maybe one thing that I'll probably hold on to anger for forever. But at some point, it'll work its way out. Like I'll forget about it, or just like time healing all wounds. Like at some point, it'll just kind of glaze over and I'll move on and not have realized it until, one day I'm thinking about whatever the situation is, or I'm reminded of somebody else who was involved. And it's like, oh yeah, that was kind of shitty. And then I can move on.
So the reference to Dante's, what is it, Circle of Hell?
Isn't it 9 circles or 7 circles?
I don't know. Sounds like an intriguing reference. I've heard it before.
I'm surprised that it's not like in your wheelhouse.
It is. I don't know. There's so many.
There's a lot of interpretations of it out there. Like it's referenced in a lot of places in a lot of different ways.
Okay, so that feels like there's something more to touch on there with respect to the realm.
Well, so how
emotional realm. Go ahead.
How do you define trauma? Maybe that'll.
So, to me, it's been like gross material trauma. So unless I can.
Like point to a scar or something?
Yeah, so broken bone is the classic example for me. Like that's obviously a trauma.
Yes.
So trauma, in generalizable terms, trauma basically occurs, I think about it in the 3 concentric rings thing. I think I've drawn that before, where you basically have, so there's comfort, like perfect comfort, and then there is, I call this the zone of proximal development, also known as the zone of demonstrated incompetence.
That's how I remember it.
It's where you're practicing. So
right.
Back to the infinite game thing. Proximal. I can reach into it. I can get there. Proximal development, and then outside of that is trauma. Trauma occurs.
Okay.
So So if I'm perfectly comfortable,
there's no trauma in there.
There's no transformation happening, or it's a very, very low rate.
That's why peace is a destructive force.
So I move into here, and I'm like in, I forget what the term was, in bodybuilding. So I used to do a lot of, you're just starting to get back into weight training, you might know the term. So there's that.
It's hypertrophy.
Yes, thank you, hypertrophy. So you're deliberately
pushing till failure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is actually, I think, at the level of tissues like muscle.
It's
you're
the
actually
level that
doing
your body
damage.
Can,
you're tearing
exactly.
things down.
Yeah, because your body needs to heal, and it heals back stronger.
Yeah.
In theory.
Yeah. So if you push that too far, you've essentially,
You injure yourself. You can't injure yourself.
which is the way that I know the trauma has actually happened is an impairment of function,
Okay.
which implicit in that is intent. So how do you know that you're not functioning? Well,
Okay.
that begs the question, what are
what's
you
the
for?
Right.
Like, what is your function? What is your purpose?
I'm going to send myself into an existential crisis next time I twist my ankle.
So then the next word that occurs to focus on is that of care. So when I was listening to you tell the story about you and your friend who was going through the loss of her father while she was in college, I think is what you said.
Yeah.
And you were empathizing, it sounded like, and that would be rough to go through that. Like,
Yeah.
you and I are, gratefully, both of our fathers are
Yes.
living, breathing creatures still, well into our adulthood, which is just
Right.
like that's
a blessing.
That's such a blessing
Yeah.
to have that living aspirational target.
For sure.
That's how I experience that.
Yep. No, I would agree.
So the care for one another. I heard what I was hearing when you were relating that story with you and your, what would you call her? She qualifies?
She doesn't know. She's like a friend. Like, she's not a friend, but she's more than an acquaintance. I don't know. Person I know.
Person of consequence?
Person of yes, she's a person of consequence. That's a good way to put it.
So there's this person of consequence. How does dear fellow land?
Yeah, that's good because she is dear to me, like she's important to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, it feels as though, and some people I think get this way earlier in life than I have. Kind of a meathead over here. The infinite game, the meta game, is to get better and better at affording care
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
without regard for circumstance.
Without regard for circumstance.
Yeah, it's like, what can I do? Well, I don't know that you can ever, it's stupid, I suppose, to say to, so this comes back to the inclusive and exclusive. I'm a human being. If I'm imagining that I'm going to be doing care on a different celestial body, that's probably moronic of me. Because I'm never going to have the opportunity to apply it.
Okay.
Like if I'm like, and also, how am I going to practice that? Like the contrivances. I think about things like the vomit comment. You know that term?
Yes.
You know what that is?
Vomit comment.
Yeah.
Like from little kids or from?
I learned about it in the context of NASA. So they basically
they
take,
spin that thing and people end up throwing up like in their helmet, and yeah, I do know about that.
Well, the one I was thinking of is they put them all. They'll empty out a big container aircraft, you know, like an airliner size thing.
Okay.
To practice operating in a zero or
okay.
near zero gravity reality. And the point that I'm trying to make is that it's so contrived, it's so costly. Like it's not practical for me to imagine affording care another person on Mars or something.
Right.
For a very few, very dedicated people, like it's astonishing to me. Like that's actually maybe plausible. It's like there's people that are dreaming about that and have been dreaming about that for a while, and there's a thread going on there, and there's, you know, we're starting to see our fellow man and our fellows, if I want to be careful with the gendering, routinely blast off into they break free the surly bonds of Mother Earth here.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, back to care. Like, it's probably good for me to just operate and practice without regard for circumstance, except for the fact that I'm probably not leaving the surface of the planet, or I'm not going to get very far away from it.
Okay.
Is that making sense?
Yes. Now
like
I follow. Yes.
So you can definitely you can definitely open up that domain, and I have. It's like you can do things like, okay, train for care at altitude.
Sure.
Train for care at depth.
Right.
So I've been through trainings for that. It's like, here's how you operate in an alpine environment. Here's how you contend with a gross material trauma in that particular domain. Here's how you contend with one at depth in scuba diving. Those are basically what I'm trying to do, is make the point. Is I'm expanding the domain.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So care. So the practice of care and the movement from the gross, for me, the zone of proximal development is into the emotional. The more you referred to an entire realm. Emotions for me, by and large, I've never liked the term emotion. I don't like it when I've always felt taken aback.
Why?
When people ask about, how are you feeling? Tell me about your emotional states. Like, can you give me some nouns? Can you label what it is that you're feeling?
And you just don't like labeling it?
Well, there's a lot. You referred to a whole realm, and it sounded like one realm of multiple realms. Like, that's a very sophisticated system of feeling in my mind. Yeah, like, if you carefully go through and start to catalog and name.
And I don't know that I could. Like, I don't know that it's the limits of language that you've talked about. Like, I don't know that I could label them. Like, I could describe how they feel, but I don't think there's necessarily an English word to name it.
That's interesting that you specify English.
Because the Germans have some good words for some of these.
Really long words, yeah.
They do, but there's a few words out there in other languages that I've come across. It's specifically German for whatever reason, that does seem to have words for some of the emotions that in the English language I wouldn't really know how to describe it. I couldn't label it, and I could kind of describe it, but I don't know that I would ever feel like I was really doing it justice.
Yeah. So I think I want to use that as a segue into the 4 ways of knowing.
Okay.
So that was also, we've talked about that a few times, and it was in the writing yesterday.
Yes.
So, the limits of language. It's not the only way to communicate, obviously.
Right.
So what else is there? How would you talk about communicating beyond language?
In general, or in the context of emotions?
Let's stay with emotions.
With
if you
emotions? That is a good question, because I'm trying to think about when I've tried to explain feeling a certain way that there's not a word for, and I think I most of the time either never we've talked about a lot of self-reflection and trying to be very aware of unconscious, right? I've liked to think that I've trained myself. Well, we talked about this yesterday about impulsivity, and that I know I'm a very impulsive person, so I have tried to kind of recognize physical body signs or sensations, like that kind of panic heart flutter that your body knows that you're thinking about making an impulsive decision. And so I've learned to watch for that. It's been hey, in your head, you're kind of thinking through this thing at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and your body's being hey, this is an intense situation. Maybe you should think about it. So I've I've tried to train myself to pick up on those other cues. So in terms of like communicating, I don't know how to, like, I admittedly don't know and don't think I do a great job of communicating in any way, like whether it be like physically or like with like body language, like expressions, or with words. These more like complicated, the emotional realm, if you will, communicating anything that's happening in that area. So I don't most of the time. Like, it's just all as part of why I don't love being alone with my own thoughts. Like, I will dwell on some of these things because I don't know. Like, I don't have my own tools to like express that. And I don't know that expressing it would necessarily help me at all. Yeah, there's some things that probably would, but I think a lot of it I would probably choose to keep to myself for a variety of reasons.
So you said something yesterday, I think, that, I mean, correct me if I didn't hear it correctly, but it really startled me. I think I asked you how much time, what was the longest
Oh, time in nature?
uninterrupted period of time that you spent by yourself in a natural circumstance. I think you said it's on the order of 4 hours.
Yeah, 4 or 5 hours.
That's astonishing to me.
Because of how little time it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be alone with my thoughts.
So how is that a regular thing, a practice, the time in nature, or is it?
No, that's like on a regular basis, time in nature before having my daughter. And I mean, it wasn't, does the dog count? Because like I would take our dog.
I think dogs are pretty natural.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't know. Some people treat them very much like people, which I kind of did. But like I would take him for walks by myself, and that would be, an hour or two. So it used to be like an hour or two every other day or so. But
okay, so that's.
So there was a time that it was somewhat frequent. Less so now, but when we had our dog, he and I spent a lot of time in nature together. But like my attention was largely focused on him. As I'm saying that, I'm thinking it was probably more like 75-25, like 75% me in my own head, 25% looking at what he was doing.
75 in your own head, 25 on him.
Yeah.
How much time do we have left to play?
It is.
We've got another maybe 30 minutes, you think?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's 9:20.
So I want to come back to the nature connection.
Mm-hmm.
Before we do that, what I would love to explore, if you're willing, is what it is that we imagine that we're up to. Like, what in the heck are you and I doing right now? What is this for? Why are we doing this? What is the motivator? You talked about impulsivity.
Mm-hmm. I do a lot of things for the plot. Just
For the plot?
For the that's what the kids say. Do it for the, like, why not? Like you know how one of the rule, are you very familiar with improv?
A little bit.
Okay, so I'm also only a little familiar, but one of the rules of improv is like yes and. Like whenever somebody brings up some suggestion, no matter how ridiculous it is, you agree. And like maybe you put some caveats, maybe you don't.
What kind of improv is this?
Improv. Like stand-up improv.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm more experienced with contact improv.
Oh. Okay, it's not dissimilar to that though.
Okay.
Like somebody like touches you, like you're responding to whatever it is that they did, but like you're responding to a direct stimuli. So it's a yes and, like you're agreeing to that contact, but then the and is however you respond. So with like verbal improv, it's very much the same thing. And part of my embrace of the absurd, I suppose,
Yeah.
is to live with like the yes and mentality. Like I don't know at what point in my life this happened, but I decided unconsciously, I think, to just see what happens. So the like do it for the plot. Like I would like to think I have really great stories of really weird shit that I've done because I've
You
been
do. I love your stories.
Thanks. But like it's because like why not? Like if it's not inherently incredibly dangerous, and even then maybe. But like depending.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you're cliff diving wearing somebody else's shoes. Like it's but it makes life, like to me, it makes life worth living. Like to embrace the absurdity of things and to like just see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was a somewhat dark time in my life that I was reading a lot of people's, it was on Reddit, but somebody was like, what's your reason for staying alive? And somebody said like, just to see what happens. And like the guy in question was like, you know, he didn't like actively want to not be here, but he was like, my motivation is just see what, like life is weird. Weird stuff happens all the time. And like, I'm limiting myself from just seeing what happens. So might as well stick around and see what happens. Like worst case scenario, I see what happens. I was like, I like that. I like thinking about life that way. Just let's see what happens.
Yeah. Death will come soon enough.
Right. Just hang out. It's a ride. It's a trip. Like nobody wins in the end. So like just have a good time with it. So like things like this is definitely very different than anything else in my life. So like to me, this is a very like novel experience.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you said novel.
Oh. Why?
Novelty. So my answer to the question, because it's all about me.
It is.
Hopeless. I'm convicted at this point. There's an inherent, so in every human, there is an inherent drive to move out, to move.
You think there's a drive to move away?
From comfort.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting. Why do you think that? Because I would say the opposite.
Yep. So I think that has to do with sexual bias. I think that would be my best guess as to why I tend to see it one way and you tend to see that particular issue the other way.
Okay. I could agree with that.
I don't know for sure,
I think
but that's my best guess.
I think it's probably largely that. I think there's also a significant generational difference because millennials and the don't me we were we were born in an okay time, but like around when 9/11 happened, like that was like a once in a generation event, once in a lifetime event. Like
it's pretty dramatic.
Like your world will never be fucked like this ever again. Lo and behold, every like 5 years there's some. Really though, every 5 years there's some once in a lifetime event, and so like the generations before us, like they had that, but not like this. And so we just keep getting hit over and over, and it's the same thing with the generations coming after us. Because they're very, at least the ones that are alive right now, are very immediately impacted by even some of the stuff that happened more in my lifetime than in theirs. But like the things that keep happening, like we keep living through these major events. So we're hanging out, bouncing back and forth here. We're trying to go in.
Your particular lifetime, yeah.
Yes. So we're hanging out here. Like I personally think that I'm closer to here because
closer to comfort.
Closer to comfort, yeah. But like
you appear that way.
Oh, I'm glad I fooled you so far. But like a good portion of my peers are hanging out right here, with trauma being like, I might not have housing soon. Okay. I can't afford housing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're trying to drive inwards because we haven't known that comfort bubble since like 2010.
Yeah. And so I'm inclined to agree with you. And I've gratefully been afforded the opportunity to just study generational phenomena quite a bit.
It's
Like
very...
I've probably spent over, well, my intuition is I've spent over 100 hours of my life studying the phenomena between generations.
It's extreme. I didn't pay attention to it until somewhat recently, like within the last year, but it's very interesting.
Yeah. So I wish I had proper attribution for this. I heard some very highly esteemed fellow, I'll say, who I've never met personally, basically give a description of what the part of the meat bubble here, the part that's actually able to form words and utilize language, talk as if it knows what it's talking about, is akin to the press secretary for the executive.
Just trying to explain nonsense.
It's all it can, yeah, it's basically doing its best to come up with a plausible explanation as to what the whole rest of the creature did yesterday.
Yeah, makes sense.
So as plausible as whatever I say may sound, it's a guess.
Yeah.
So having said all of that, that's my disclaimer basically for saying, okay,
I'm just doing the best I can.
well, so I want to say for us now, so for what you and I are doing, because I genuinely want to know. So I actually believe that we're actually on purpose. We may not know
What the purpose is.
Yeah, it definitely feels to me like the sense of purpose ebbs and flows, but that doesn't mean that the actual purpose goes away.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So the most succinctly that I think I can state what the purpose is, the eternal purpose has to do with that capacity to afford care without regard for circumstance. Okay. So it's a principled basis. You see that?
No.
The principle is care. In more classical terms, it's something like host. Like I want to forever increase my capacity to serve as a host.
Okay, yeah, now I follow, yeah.
So that's hospitality. So you notice how the etymology lines up right away with various scales of trauma. So hospital, when I broke my ankle, where did I go right away? I went to a hospital. Gratefully, there were some highly skilled practitioners there that basically knocked my ass out, opened up the meat bubble over here, put some extra pieces in, took care of me until I woke up, and then sent me off to the physical therapist who hurt me or asked me to do things that were very, very, very uncomfortable. They're painful things.
Well, that's how you know there's growth.
So what's the point? The point is there's an aim. The aim is that capacity to administer care.
Okay.
Host. Be hospitable. Be increasingly hospitable without regard for circumstance. So this is a weird circumstance that you and I are in. Like we're in a little cubicle in a public institution here. And yet, I don't know about you, but I feel very graciously hosted by your attention.
Oh.
Or the attention that, even better, the attention that you are disposing of.
Okay.
The disposition of whatever that is, that is you're affording me audience? Is that how you would say that?
I'd say that, yeah.
Okay, so that is, where is all this going? You got to reel me back in, Allison.
Zone, you're going to the wrong
Generational.
person.
So what are you and I? I'm trying to come up with a plausible explanation as to what you and I are doing in this weird little room, running a recording device. What in the heck are we doing?
Well, I know my own intentions. You have
How well?
That's true. I don't know. I know the ones that, that's a good question. I know what I think some intentions are. Our conversations tend to expand out from any, in terms of like thinking. It gets me to think about how I think, which is not something it's something I'm like downstream of in terms of like entertainment that I consume, but I am not typically like actively engaged in conversations about thinking about how I think or thinking about how others think. And I think as we've discussed, or maybe we haven't, like I don't think that I think the way other people do. And like,
say that again, please.
I don't think that I think the same way other people do.
That's
like,
too many negatives for me. Can you state it in the affirmative? Are you saying I think differently than other people?
That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Yes. And part of me would like to understand, one, why, but two, how other people think.
Okay.
For my own purposes. But
nefarious or otherwise.
they're all nefarious. No, but I think it would benefit me in a few arenas of my life to maybe be a little bit more empathetic and a little bit more patient. And I think part of that is understanding how other people think. Well, I don't take us the wrong way. I don't think that you are representative of how other people think. I do think that you know, again, because of like media or context that you are, well, that you participate in, but also that like you're downstream of, that you have a perspective and supporting tools to expand my domain of knowledge in this area that like I don't have access to elsewhere. I mean, I have access, but like I don't even know where to start. And a lot of times if I get overwhelmed with options, I just don't do anything. It's part of the executive dysfunction. So that's why I'm here.
Okay, that's beautiful. Thank you. That's very gratifying to hear, because I think I really do know where. I think I do know. I think I'm going to be so bold as to say a couple of things. One, it isn't a consequence of media for me.
Okay.
I don't believe that's the case.
Okay.
I think it's a consequence of where and how I was raised.
Okay.
I was raised in a super natural environment. It's weird that just came out that way. I was raised in a very natural environment.
Yeah.
I was raised in there was very little artificial.
Yeah.
So to me, the spectrum is perfectly natural, perfectly artificial. Somewhere, we all exist somewhere in between those, moment to moment. Right now, I would characterize where we are right now as pretty artificial. Like we're inside artifices upon artifices upon artifices. It's like being in a Minecraft game. It's like we're in these boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes.
Yeah.
There are no straight lines in nature. The bodies come from the natural environment. We're composed of the earth, in as much as we're embodied creatures. Artifices are lovely. Like they're very helpful. They're very like I got nothing against artificial. That's art.
Okay. Yeah.
So to me, artificial just means by the hand of man. Like some way, somehow, whatever this creature is that we call a human being was involved in the production, the thing, that which I come to conscious awareness in. Was really easy to step out of it, especially around here, and go notice, and it's such a joy, and that's what so my intention. So in terms of knowing intention, that was at the top of the page.
Yes.
That intention, that one, like that took me years of intuitive sensing to come to that particular constellation of words.
Okay.
And anyway, the point there is that I know what I intend. Also in that little story that I wrote was a rather, I pointed to somebody anonymously. And I said, there was a particular guide at a particular point in my life who basically said, there's two things. There's what you intend,
and
or you don't even have to make it yours. You can say there's intention,
and
there's attention.
I was thinking about that since I read that yesterday. I've been thinking about that a lot. Like it took me down a little loop. Go on, sorry.
I hope it goes both directions. I hope it works both ways. I hope it's not going down.
I think going down is in like, I found myself very much fixating on the implications of that. Not in a bad way.
Okay.
Like I wasn't like circling the drain. It was just like not spiraling. It ended up being a very deep thought exercise with myself. Just like that concept, I suppose. Dichotomy? Do I want to use dichotomy in that scenario? Doesn't
I
have to
would
be
say I would say assertion. So
Okay.
that's a proposition.
Okay, yeah, but it ended up where I was at in the podcast that I'm been listening to on and off. There was an episode that was talking about cognitive bias, and then that kind of like looped into that, the intention and attention and how they inform each other.
Yeah. So, boy, my tummy's really growling.
You're gonna hear on the recording later. Mine's been going nuts, and it just.
That's awesome. It's like the body. I'm here.
Bobby's like, you forgot
Like,
to
don't
feed
forget
me.
about me. I'm here. All this talky. It's cool and all, but hey, we got things to do. So I noticed my bladder also is very much gathering my attention right now.
I mean,
Go.
you're living and breathing. I assume that it constantly is.
So what I hope to do, so we've got maybe a few minutes left to play.
It is 9:40, 9:37.
9:30. Okay, so we should wrap this up.
Okay.
So basically, and then maybe tee it up for part 2.
Sure.
If you're game.
I am.
So I've watched over the course of my life generations be born into the artificial almost exclusively, and you've related stories to that. So that's one of the reasons I think you're as interesting to me as you are, is because of the difference in your lived experience from mine in that particular way, I'll say my body, my being has been biased by, you could just say, a more natural way of being. I think mine is way more natural. Like, I think it's pretty, you and I embody pretty, okay, we can argue about that one.
Okay.
But so then the second thing that I want to tee up here is, so there's a tension or there's an opportunity to, I want to draw attention to whatever the true purpose is.
Okay.
So I don't need to say what the true purpose is. People can find it themselves.
Purposes can evolve also.
Do you and I serve something like a sighting mechanism? Maybe. For others. Some people will relate more to you. Some people will relate more to me. What I hope you and I are demonstrating is from both sides a genuine interest in what that true purpose is.
Yeah.
So so that's what I mean by sighting. It's somewhere in between you and I.
Yes.
And when we present, when we demonstrate, you know, if I'm just super pedantic and say procedure, like we're conducting a procedure here in a good faith dialogue is what I would name the procedure. Okay, well that is, I don't know about others, but for me, that's fascinating. It's like when I get to see a dialogue like conducted in good faith that is humble in the sense that parties know that they don't know and yet are seeking true purpose.
Well, and it's hard to find examples of that kind of conversation, right?
Well, no. So that's that's the thing is there's an abundance of this available now. And so now I'm going to go back to the sexual bias and I'm going to say, I don't know, but I've been told that so this has to do with the internet presence thing. And disposition of attention on that content, that media afforded by the internet. So there's again, don't know, but I've been told people should check me on this. It's marked the difference between the male and the female as to media attended. So the disposition of attention through a female nervous system and the disposition of attention through a male nervous system focuses on different form of content.
Are you talking about different form as in the subject material or as in the actual format, like
Both.
video versus?
Both.
Huh.
So we can talk a lot more about that.
I would
we
love
tee
to
this
talk
up.
about that.
So I can just say what my heavy bias has been for basically since 2019, maybe before that, whenever as things came online, my focus, which is, you know, I'm not representative of all males, obviously, but I'm going to guess that I'm more representative of more males than you are.
Probably, yes.
My bias has been to long form dialogue, so long form content. So exactly what I just described, like on the order of 2.5 hours, 3, sometimes even more than that. It's like that's a focused disposition of attention. It takes a lot of focused attention to pay attention to a dialogue for 2.5, 3 hours at a whack. Contrast that with TikTok, Instagram, Reels.
You think men aren't using those?
They do. I think that if you look at it, you're probably going to find a bias that is plausibly explained by sex.
So long form, when you're saying long form in this context, you're talking about video specifically, not podcasts.
Well, it's inclusive of both.
Okay, because so video, I don't know. I don't know outside of you and my dad and my friend Kai. I don't know anybody that watches YouTube. So but like podcasts, like long form podcasts. I listen to podcasts constantly, all the time. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right places, but like they're not short. They're hour to 2.5, and it's series. It's like one that I'm in right now. It's like a 4-part series. So I don't think it's gender bias from my perspective. It could be that a lot in YouTube in particular, that the long form content is more geared towards a male audience based on the subject material.
Oh, okay.
And that's why there's more men that are watching it, because it's long form content that would be inherently more interesting to men than to women. I could be wrong, because admittedly, I don't watch a lot of YouTube, like unless there's an express need, but podcasts all the time, constantly. But I also say that knowing that I don't think I know any women that listen to podcasts. Like as I'm thinking this through, I'm like, it's just me. Surely there are other women that are listening to podcasts.
Okay. So I think we better this is gonna have to be
continued. I would love to get into the gender specifics of media content. Like that is genuinely interesting to me, like not in the combative way. Like I genuinely think that is interesting.
Okay. That's a great place to wrap, I think.
I think so.
I really appreciate
I,
the attention.
like I said, I'm honored to be here.
All right. Thanks, Allyson.
Of course.